When you're kind to others, Allah will be kind to you. When you reach out to others, Allah will reach out to you. When you're assisting others, you will definitely receive the assistance of Allah.
Racism is, the original sin. The feeling of superiority over another was the first sin committed in the time of, the creation of Adam. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered the angels and Iblis to make sujood to him. The only one that refused was Shaitan, Iblis. And then he says to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, أَنَا خَيْرٌ مِّنْهُ, that I am better than him. خَلَقْتَنِي مِن نَارٍ وَخَلَقْتَهُ مِن طِينٍ. You created me from fire and you made him from dirt, from clay. Therefore, I have superiority over him. So because of that, I'm not going to make sujood to him. So this, having that feeling of I'm better than you because of your skin color, because of something that you didn't choose, not something you worked hard for. This is from the sins of Shaitan. When Bilal radiallahu anhu gets on top and he's making the adhan, the Quraysh that have surrendered but they haven't embraced Islam yet, they begin talking to one another. Is this who he's letting give adhan? Couldn't he find somebody better than this crow? And this is how they're talking about Bilal radiallahu anhu. And they were saying some really disgusting things. Then Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu says, Jibreel alayhi salam comes down to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam and informs him of what these people are saying. So then the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he gives a khutbah and he says, "Oh mankind, the time of having pride in your forefathers, that time has ended. And Allah has replaced it with something better. A man is only one of two types. It's either he is a man of taqwa, a man of righteousness, and a man that is pleasing to Allah, or a man that is a fajr, a man that is a sinner. He disobeys Allah and Allah is not pleased with him. These are the only categories of men." And he says, and every man comes from Adam, and Adam was created from turab, from clay, from dirt.
Prove that West African Muslims were here in America before Columbus.
What was on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean, because the Mali Empire controlled West Africa all the way to the coasts of Gambia, Senegal, Sierra Leone, etc. So he equipped 200 boats full of people and 100 boats full of provisions, and he sent them off, and only one boat returned.
Allahu Akbar.
So when he saw that happen, he said, "I want to go myself." So he equipped 2,000 boats full of people, another 1,000 boats with provisions, and then he sent them across the Atlantic, and then he led them across the Atlantic Ocean, and he entrusted the kingdom to Mansa Musa, and he never returned. So if we think about the fact that the Mali Empire was a Muslim empire in West Africa, the Mandinka people at that time were Muslim. Mansa Musa, his younger brother, had gone on Hajj, and he was the 5th king of the Mali Empire to go on Hajj. Some people say he was the first, but his great uncle went on Hajj. His grandfather, his uncles, they all went on Hajj. It was something that they did. So Islam was very much firmly established in the empire by that time. 2,000 boats in the year 1320 something, full of Muslims, crossed the Atlantic. Did they make it to the other side? Because if they did make it to the other side, then that means that the first Muslims here were not only free West African Muslims, not enslaved, but they were Muslims, and Muslims have been here before Columbus. Yes. Because Columbus was in 1492. What's the rhyme? In 1492? Sailed the ocean blue. Yeah. But when he sailed the ocean blue, and I discussed this in the book in chapter 3, you can all find the evidence there, all the quotes and everything. One of the people that accompanied him spoke about, he wrote a travel log of everything that they experienced on the journey, and he said when they got to the Caribbean islands, they saw boats that they know had come from the coast of Guinea. And there's a scholar from Harvard University called Leo Weiner who wrote a book about this in 1920, 100 years ago. And the book was called Africa and the Discovery of the Americas. And he faced severe opposition at that time, because we can imagine that's the height of the Jim Crow era, that's at the height of racism, and you bringing a theory that Africans came to the Americas before Columbus, complete craziness. And he was a European, he was a white European professor. He didn't have any vested interest in this, but he brought all of these accounts where they say they saw boats that came from West Africa. They say they saw the native indigenous people bringing them cloth that looked like the cloth that they saw from West Africans and North Africans in Granada. And Christopher Columbus even says, these cloths look exactly like the cloths that the Africans have in West Africa, but there's no way that the Africans could have brought them here, because the distance is 800 leagues. And so by his calculations, it couldn't have happened. So I remember when I gave this lecture at Oxford University, I was talking to some of the Muslim students there. And so I said to them, okay, what do you study? And they were telling me they study history. And I say, okay, so when they teach you history at this institution, what is the narrative? How does history begin? And they say, well, the first historian in history was Herodotus, who was an ancient Greek historian. And they say he's the one that established the science of history. And it's an ancient Greek thing. And then from the Greeks, we have the Romans. Then from the Romans, they skip to the Middle Ages, etc., etc., etc. But what's interesting is that in the Middle Ages in Europe, there was a period called the Dark Ages. And this was the period when the Islamic world in the Middle East under the Dawlat al-Abbasiyya was at its peak. The House of Wisdom was there. They were translating all of the books that they took from the Persians and from the Greeks and from the Romans, translating them into Arabic, reviving the knowledge, etc. The Khalifa Harun al-Rashid established Bayt al-Hikmah, and he hired people to translate all of the ancient texts and all of the knowledges that existed prior to the coming of Islam, because the Prophet ﷺ, the first revelation sent to him was Iqra, read. And so in order for them, and the Islamic society was the first knowledge-based society. The Prophet ﷺ was sent with a book. It was in Arabia before him, it was hard to find people who could read and write. Because of the Quran, that's what people started to learn how to read and write. If we look at, for example, some of the battles like Khandaq, in order to be freed, if you were captured, if you were literate, you could teach 10 people how to read and write and you will be free. So that shows the emphasis that the Prophet ﷺ placed on learning and knowledge, which then led into the Umayyad Khilafah and the Abbasid Khilafah, this knowledge being expanded, and them taking the knowledge that was available in the world at the time and translating it into Arabic and reviving it. At that time, Europe was in the Dark Ages. Most people couldn't read and write. Only the select few, the priests and the royal families, had any knowledge of anything to do with literacy or literature, etc. If you watch any TV series I don't want to name some TV series, but if you watch any of those TV series, you'll get ideas of that. And the Europeans rediscovered their own legacy through their interaction with the Muslims. It was popes, like for example, and the example I give in this book.
Can you say that again, Sheikh? They rediscovered
their own intellectual heritage through their interaction with Muslims, because the Muslims had preserved the knowledge of the ancient Greeks and the ancient Romans, and they were the ones that passed it on to the Latin-speaking Europeans. Sayyidina Amr bin As came into Egypt. He conquered Egypt. He's buried in Fustat, etc., or Muqattam. Some people, Uqba bin Nafi continues and he goes into Tunisia, what we now know as Tunisia, which takes the name Ifriqiya. That's where we first hear the word Africa. It's an Arabic term. He establishes a city called Kairouan. From Kairouan, it becomes a center of knowledge in Africa. Ulama travel down into West Africa. Ulama travel into North Africa. From the descendants of Uqba bin Nafi, we have Fatima al-Fihri.
Yes.
And Fatima al-Fihri, as we know, established the oldest university in the world, Qarawin University in Fez. It's still running today. She was a Muslim Arab woman from Quraysh, a Muslim Arab African woman, because she was in Tunisia and then her university was in Morocco. So the narratives of Africans don't have knowledge, false. Women were not empowered and not knowledgeable, false, because the oldest university in the world was established by a Muslim, African, Arab, Muslim woman. That university,
I'm sorry, that by itself challenges so many narratives and so many narratives.
But listen to this. So there was a pope called Sylvester. And you know, the popes in Europe, they had the most power when it came to administration, because all of the kings were under the authority of the Catholic Church. The pope is the head of the Catholic Church. Pope Sylvester, before he becomes the pope, he travels to Morocco and he studies in Qarawin. He learns Arabic, he learns numbers, and he's the one that changed. Have you ever seen Latin numerals? The V and the I and the X? He changed it to these numbers. If you go on Wikipedia, the numbers that we know today, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Arabic numerals.
They're called Arabic numerals. Because he learned Arabic in Qarawin and then brought these numerals back to replace the Latin numerals that were in popular use. That revolutionized science. Who works in IT? What's the thing called with the zeros and the ones? Algorithm, and binary. And
Binaries,
that's all based on Arabic numerals. which Pope Sylvester introduced to the West from Qaraween, from Fatima, from Africa, and from Fatima Al-Fihriya's university. So if it wasn't for Muslims, IT as we know it wouldn't exist. Technology as we know it wouldn't exist. All of the things that we know today in modern society that we attribute to the West, and oh, the West is so advanced, and oh, we need to learn Western knowledge because they're way ahead of us, and look at how underdeveloped we are. No, the West came in, underdeveloped us, took the knowledge, and then presented the narrative to you as if you didn't know anything and they know everything, when really everything they have they took from you or they learnt from you.
Yes.
And then they packaged it and whitewashed it and gave it back to you and made you think that you didn't have anything and you need to leave what you have.
When you don't have a connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when you lack the relationship you do with the deen, it's like, what self-love can you have?
I feel like you're lost, like in the Quran, right, where it says,
وَلَا تَكُونُوا كَالَّذِينَ نَسُوا اللَّهَ فَأَنسَاهُمْ أَنفُسَهُمْ أُولَئِكَ هُمُ الْفَاسِقُونَ.
because when you lose your faith in Allah, to be quite frankly, I feel like you lost faith in yourself, because you yourself don't even know where you're going after that.
And you have to be very selfish when it comes to choosing your friends, because in the end of the day, in Yawm al-Qiyamah, these friends will not help you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He described in Surah Abasa, يَوْمَ يَفِرُّ الْمَرْءُ مِنْ أَخِيهِ. It will be a day where the person will be running away from their own brother. وَأُمِّهِ وَأَبِيهِ. The mother and the father. If your father and mother are running away from you, where do your friends stand? So you have to be very wary of who you choose.
We don't know how to take an L. And when we do take an L, we feel like, oh, damn, what am I messing up? But that's just part of life. We learn from our mistakes. We learn from things that happen to us. We also feel pressure to feel happy all the time. Happiness is just one emotion out of many. And so when we expect to feel happy all the time, and when we're not happy, we're just like, oh, something's wrong. Something's wrong.
Something's
with
wrong.
me. Something's wrong with me. Identifying with it.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you guys, there's two ways I see life, man. I see it as a blessing, and how the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he describes it, that this dunya, for the believers, is a prison, and for the non-believers, is Jannah. This is their Jannah. You know, that's all they got. These hardships are meant to build you up.
You have to respect and allow somebody to have their own opinion. People didn't grow up in your household. They grew up in their household with a different life, different perspective, different upbringing, different values, different morals. So a lot of times people are going to think differently than you do. Don't be so quick to say you're wrong. No, I don't see it that way. No, I don't know how you grew up. Exactly. You don't know how I grew up because you wasn't there with me. So respect the fact that I think of things or see things a little different than you. Doesn't make it right or wrong. It's just different. Respect that. Doesn't mean that we should have any malice toward each other or any dislike toward each other because you don't see something my way. It's okay to disagree on certain things. Love. You want something that somebody has so much, or you want to live the life that they live so bad that you allow jealousy, envy, and hatred brew up in your spirit. Remember that you got to take on all that person went through to get what they got, right? Good and bad. Comes as a package deal, right? All inclusive. You can't just push things aside that you don't want. Nah, I don't want to experience that. No, I ain't taking that, but I'll take this. I can handle that. No, you got to carry all that. You got to take on all that, because that's what that person had to do to mold them into getting what they got. So when you start feeling jealousy, envy, and hatred, remember that you got to go through what they went through to get what they got. Love.
We had to come from an approach where we're not alienating brothers away, or sisters too, away from the deen. You know, the deen is not for Muslims. The deen's for mankind, right? Even myself, I'm guilty of thinking like that sometimes, but the deen, it was revealed for mankind. And so it's our position to be open and to be gentle and to be Muslim to everybody, not just to other Muslims. Because the deen is perfect. Like, you can search all day for some type of contradiction in our deen and you won't find it. And I feel like sometimes it puts an obligation on us to think that we have to be perfect. And that's far from the truth. When you realize that the expectation is not for you to be perfect. The expectation is for you to grow and to be repentant. It's okay to make mistakes. I'm definitely not going to encourage anybody to commit any sins, you know what I mean? Major or minor. But at the same time, just understanding that if it happens, you're not doomed and you shouldn't give up on yourself. Allah is ever merciful.